Hello, this is Chris Cooper, and a big welcome to the Business Elevation Show. It's great to be back with you again for yet another week. I can't believe this is episode 598. We've done a few now. However, what I'm really excited to do today is to introduce you to yet another fantastic guest, and Jude Currivan is fascinating. You're going to enjoy today's show. We're going to talk about we're inseparable from fragmentation to unity and a new vision for business leadership, and humanity. I think this is really important today to get a bigger picture on the world and our place and what is going on. Be reminded about what is truly important. My work, very briefly, I develop leaders, teams, and business cultures. I've been doing that as a consultant and coach and facilitator for 20 years. I also host the Business Elevation Show, which I've discovered this week is one of the longest running shows in the world right now, which I'm quite excited to hear. There's not many that have been going as long as I have. I don't know what that is, whether that's madness, what it is, but it's I've been going now, I think in the 14th year. And also, I host an international community called the Elevation Collective that I founded in the pandemic, which cares about amplifying good. So it involves lots of amazing leaders and who've been on this show in the past, who I brought together. Those lots of kind, caring people who are contributing to a bigger world, and we support of each other in that amplification of that work. So let's think about the world today. The world is marked by growing complexity. There's division. We're at an ecological tipping point. Yet a new story has been emerging, one that reclaims our deep interconnectedness with each other, with the Earth and with the cosmos itself. And my guest, Dr. Jude Currivan, is a cosmologist, a planetary healer, and a former international business leader. Her CV is actually quite incredible. She has a PhD in archaeology. She has a master's degree in physics from Oxford University, specializing in cosmology and quantum physics. She's the author of 7 non-fiction books, including Cosmos with Dr. Irvin Laszlo. She's been also managed to be in all of that time to be a group finance director for 2 international businesses. She is a member of the Evolutionary Circle with Deepak Chopra, and in 2017 she co-founded the World View to facilitate a better understanding and experiencing an embodiment of unity in service to conscious evolution. We're going to find out more about that shortly. But what does it mean to live and lead from the awareness that we're inseparable from the systems that we shape? And how do organizations evolve from extractive and competitive to being regenerative and co-creative? This conversation today, I think, is for visionary leaders. If you see yourself in that ilk, if you see yourself as a change maker, or you're ready to explore what it really means to take on a whole world view, because I think sometimes we don't, as leaders, think from the bigger perspective. So I've shared a little bit about Jude today, but what I do want you to know is my dad was a steel worker. Jude, your family came from coal mining in the north of England. So we need to understand, tell us a bit about what life was like in the north of England and how you ended up, gaining the level of academia and senior roles that you managed to achieve in your life. Tell us a bit about that.
Thanks, Chris. Well, yeah, my dad and granddad were coal miners. I grew up in Chesterfield in Derbyshire, was then a coal mining community. Obviously, since the 80s, that has moved on. It was a very, very difficult time
Yeah.
when the pits were closing because I think, although the jobs themselves were really, really hard, my dad died when he was in his early 30s from a lung disease
Mm.
associated with the mine. And so my mum became a widow and brought up my younger brother and myself. So it was very tough. But with all that, it was a community. It was a community that was in not just interconnected, but interdependent. So I grew up with that understanding of interdependence every day around me, how neighbours looked after neighbours as well as families, where, all the generations looked out for each other. Nobody was left out, nobody was excluded. And it wasn't, and it was far more than money. It was about emotional attachments. And so that's how I grew up. And at the same time, I'd been experiencing what you might call supernormal phenomena, um, out of body experiences, all the, we could talk about it for a long time, since I was 4 years old. So within that very grounded coal mining community, I also had the experience of what I call walking between worlds from a very young age and as a lifelong part of who I am and how I experience the world. So with all of that, I'm fascinated also by ancient wisdom. I was reading stories of gods and goddesses and Egyptian mythologies and Chinese traditions, again, since I was very small, and fascinated by science. So all these threads have been with me all my life in a way. So when I was 18, oh, I was fairly smart. So I actually got a scholarship to Oxford University when I was 18 to study physics. I was the first person in my family to go to university. I think the first person in my family to leave Chesterfield. So it was a whole new journey.
So you must have been, I mean, were there other members of your family like you, or were you very different?
We never, well, first of all, I never shared my, if you like, multidimensional experiences, my all of my supernormal experiences. But I suspect if I had, first of all, my mum would have been absolutely fine with that. She was very intuitive. The family were very impoverished though, so she left school at 14, but she was one of the smartest people I've ever known.
Yeah.
And she was one of the kindest and certainly most intuitive. And my grandmother was very intuitive. So I suspect there was a long line of witches in our family. Without naming the name. Um, so I think I inherited that sort of, that sense. But I didn't share those experiences. But clearly, I gave my first lecture on quantum physics when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And so I was seen as being a bit of a cuckoo in the nest when it came to, just intellectual craziness. But I was loved and I was accepted for who I am and who I was. I was never meant, never felt, never shown that I was other than deeply loved. And my brother the same, very, very different, but we were loved unconditionally.
That's brilliant. And I remember the coal miners going out on strike.
Yeah,
I'm probably now live maybe 30 miles south of Chesterfield in Leicestershire, but
yeah,
my family were from Scunthorpe, a steel mining town, and I remember my father, the steelworkers went out on strike in sort of sympathy and support of the
yeah,
coal miners. So I
yeah,
remember that having a similar community feel, but
yeah,
also quite a hardship that we went through at that time, and a lot of stress. I'm interested that you talk about the outer body experiences and supernatural. It's just been interesting having done so many years of interviewing remarkable people. There has been a thread there with a number of people talking about these experiences. I myself, I think I'm very intuitive, but I'm not. I can't say I've ever had an outer body experience. But what can you share just a little bit of what you experienced or what you
yeah. Well,
experienced that is maybe different and why you do you think?
why not me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And why not
Well,
everybody?
everybody. Can we all access
Because
this?
we do. And this, I would say, I wouldn't even use the word supernatural. I would
Mm.
use the word supernormal.
Yeah.
Because this is what, as a cosmologist, I've spent much of my life really chasing the curiosity of why is the real, why are things as they are.
Mm.
And from that very early age of appreciating the unitive nature of reality, and yet that unity expressed in radical diversity and interdependence. From that unitive perspective, I always realized that these attributes are our natural inheritance. They're
Mm.
who we really are. And yet I was brought up and educated as you were, as I guess pretty much everyone who's going to be listening to our conversation today, taught that, a mechanistic worldview
Yes.
that really goes back to the mid 19th century. It's Newtonian physics. It goes back before quantum physics and relativity physics. So, you know, what we're taught at school, how our businesses run, yeah, are all based on that Newtonian physics, that mechanistic worldview of the 19th century, because it was at its height when its technologies drove the Industrial Revolution.
Mm.
So when the Industrial Revolution was expanding trade and you know the need to be able to take economics into you know how we are with each other, the economics was based on the same mechanistic worldview. So we had hierarchies, we had approaches of exploitation and all that we know so well and that business knows so well. But the business models were all founded on that, you know, mechanistic worldview of Newtonian physics. And then through the 20th century, they were so embedded in trade, in economics, in the financial way of being things, that they kept to that. They've never moved on,
Mm.
which is why we're where we are now. And now with this awakening, with this perception, this evidence-based understanding, and it is evidence-based now, understanding of a unitive reality, and that consciousness and mind and consciousness aren't something we have. They're literally what we and the whole world are. All of that, both, you know, is what I've experienced from I was very small, but it's, I would say, it's who we really are. So
Yeah.
your intuition is just, it's our natural superpower
Yes.
because of who we are, and we are inseparable from, you know, from each other, our planetary home, and literally the whole world. So that now I think is the conversation of our times, the choice of our times, whether to go on with that old worldview of separation and materiality, or literally wake up and acknowledge and realize this emergent understanding, which is of course ancient understanding of wholeness.
Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned there that the world is, you know, fundamentally unified. You describe it as, and we're inseparable from each other, and from the earth, and from the cosmos. Can you just help us to understand that? Help us to unpack it a little bit, because there's a lot in
There
that
is a lot in that.
statement.
There is a lot in that. Yeah, in 30 seconds, Jude, tell me.
You have a bit longer than
Oh, can I? Oh, that's very kind
that.
of you. Well, I guess before I just preset that with this is not theoretical ideas. This is now supported by evidence at all scales of existence and across many, many different fields of research, not just physics and cosmology, but also evolutionary biology and systems theory, meteorology, chemistry, across all scales. And to sort of set that as well in context, in 2022, the Nobel Prize for Physics was given for this unitive understanding of our whole universe.
Right.
And the point with the Nobel Prize for Physics is only given to settled science. So, for example, Einstein did not get the Nobel for Physics for relativity theory because it was too contentious.
I see.
He got it for the photoelectric effect, which there was so much evidence for it that everyone, okay, yeah, ticked all the boxes, let's give him a Nobel Prize. So in 2022, the Nobel Prize was given to three researchers who'd been studying the unitive nature of our entire universe for many, many decades. So I want to set that up front because, you
Mm.
know, as I say, this isn't just a few ideas. This is an underpinning and a framing now that we can really stand on as our existential reality. It's not an aspiration, it's our existential reality. So I wanted to set
Yeah.
that. So
Good.
what
That
does
helps.
it mean? What does it mean? Well, first of all, it means that reality is real. And it also means that the appearance of our universe, its energy and matter and space and time, are indeed real, but they are its appearance, not its underlying causation.
Yeah.
So we now know from all these areas of research and the evidence and the patterns we find again and again and again at all scales that the appearance of our universe emerges from deeper levels of universal intelligence and causation. And it does so in a way that we would recognize from our current technologies. Because, as a technology, we now have holograms. Yeah.
Mm.
What we're realizing cosmologically, and we're realizing it from the study of black holes, is that we can consider the appearance of our universe as a cosmic hologram, where its reality and its appearance is projected from the boundaries of what we call space-time, but are not, as we are holograms. Let's come out and say it. And we are real. It's just the way that universal intelligence, cosmic mind, if you like, creates a universe simply and easily. But the key is just as a hologram, our technological holograms, the entirety of a hologram is actually embedded in every part, down to the level of its pixelation. And that is true of our universe. But the pixelation scale of our universe is minute. It's as tiny as to an atom as an atom is to the whole universe. And compared to our best high definition technologies for holograms, the pixelation of the appearance and the reality of our universe is trillions of trillions times smaller than our best high definition. Absolutely minute. So that's one understanding. And the other understanding is that the information that is obviously is all pervasive in what we call our information technologies, including us being able to have this conversation. I'm speaking the language of English. That spoken language is then translated into whole streams of ones and zeros,
Mm.
so that it can be scooted down cables and bounced off satellites and into your computer and then retranslated into English. And when you speak, the same happens to, the other way around. What we're finding, and again, this is through lots of studies that I write extensively about by thousands of researchers, is that the appearance of our universe, pixelated at that minute level that I just mentioned, does so in the form of meaningful information. The same digital alphabet of ones and zeros that we use in our digitized technologies is the language that our universe uses to make up its entire meaningful existence. So from that tiny, tiny scale, that tiny pixelation, all the ones and zeros of universal intelligence and causation then accumulate and scale up to form atoms and molecules, and eventually stars and galaxies and planets and plants and people. The entire appearance of our universe is made up of pixelated, meaningful information. That's the simplest I can offer it, but it's basically
Mm.
showing us how universal consciousness creates a universe that meaningfully exists and, crucially, purposefully evolves from simplicity to complexity. And it sounds, I hope it doesn't sound complicated, because it's not. And I hope it doesn't sound complex, because it's not. But its innate simplicity is able then to co-create incredible levels of complexity. When you think of a planet or a plant or a person, when you think of it down to the atomic scale, and then you take it down to this level of pixelated information, it's the most extraordinary story. And crucially, it embeds meaning and purpose. So it means that us, each of us, who are microcosmic co-creators of its reality, also are inherently meaningful and
Mm.
purposeful.
Mm. So what you're saying, we are something infinitesimally small of a greater whole, but
We are,
which
but we're
is
not infinitesimally small. We're midway. The size of us, I don't know how tall you are. I'm a littly. I'm 5'3.5". But we're midway between atoms and galaxies. And when we talk about atoms, the pixelation scale of our universe is as small as to an atom as the atom is to the whole universe. If I say for the mathematically minded amongst us, we're talking about a scale of 10 to the minus 35 meters.
Right.
We're talking small here. We're
Yes.
talking small here. But
Yeah.
when you think about it, that enables vast amounts of meaningful information to be actually embodied even at atomic scales,
Yeah.
let alone when we sort of take the nested complexity up and up and up to a level of a human body with 37 trillion cells within it.
Mm.
Yeah.
We are remarkable, aren't we?
Yes, we are, but the whole of reality is remarkable.
Remarkable. It's a tiny part of it. It's quite mind expanding, isn't it? It's to be able to be able to really kind of create a perspective that you understand that.
It
It-
is, and yet, it's incredibly intimate and personal because
yeah.
one of the things I did in my last two books is restate the beginning of our universe from a big bang to a big breath, because we know it wasn't big. We know that the Big Bang was facetious. It's tiny, but it's not, it wasn't a bang. Our universe began in the most extraordinarily fine-tuned and ordered state, which enabled a relational way. The laws of physics are profoundly relational and very simple at their heart. It enabled that journey from that first moment to be an evolutionary arc from simplicity to complexity. So rather than big bang, I talk about it being the first moment of an ongoing big breath, which is the ancient understanding as well. But of course, the big breath breathes through us in our little breaths in every moment. When we breathe in, we're breathing in essentially living universe. I would say loving universe too, but a living, benevolent universe through our little breaths in every moment. So that's a personal, it seems to me, invitation
So
of
so
the
has has
vastness.
has the world of science, does it now believe that it wasn't a Big Bang?
No,
People still
I'm not
talk
saying
about the
it
Big Bang.
wasn't. No, no, no,
Yeah.
no. It's the terminology of bang. We know the best evidence is it began in an incredibly small state. The beginning of what we know as space and time, nearly 14 billion years ago.
Hmm.
And since then, space has expanded and time has flowed forward. The evolutionary impulse of our universe has progressed from its innate simplicity at the beginning, which is hydrogen, helium, and a tad of lithium, to ever greater complexity.
Hmm.
The point I'm making is it wasn't chaotic.
Right.
It was ordered. It had meaning and purpose. And so the big breath, and an ongoing big breath, of course, it wasn't just a one-off event. It's an ongoing evolutionary story of
Hmm.
our entire universe and us as part of that. And so so I'm absolutely agreeing with that perception of our beginning. I'm just reframing it from a sort of accidental, random journey to something much more profound,
Yeah.
and with us as meaningful members of this story.
Yeah. So we see in life a lot of kind of inherited separation. So we've just got 4 minutes till commercial break. So
Sure.
people see themselves versus others. They see humans versus nature. Business versus society. It feels like there's a world view that of separateness. Um, but that's not true, is it? We actually
I,
should be. It seems to be happening in our reality. But the truth is, we're really all one part of this
we are,
cosmic.
but I think there's a couple of really key points to make. One is that unity is not uniformity.
Okay.
Unity is expressed in radical diversity. Every leaf on every tree is different, every snowflake is different. For goodness sake, every human being is different. And yet we're all part of that same journey. We're all that part of and inseparable from that wholeness. So that I think is really important. The second is that this mechanistic worldview I was referring to earlier, the 19th century Newtonian perspective, has brought us to what I call a dis-ease of separation.
Mm,
It's no longer serving us that journey of individuation and uniqueness is no longer serving us. And it's not that we have to put it aside. What I'm suggesting is we expand what Einstein called our circle of compassion from the me to include the we and to include the all. It's not losing ourselves. It's basically remembering ourselves, but remembering our uniqueness and our meaning and our purpose and our belonging within the wider we and the overall whole. That's that, and that I think is really what we're here to explore together today.
And this is, was this why you created the whole world view, or co-created it?
Yeah, because when in 2017, when my book, The Cosmic Hologram, came out, there was a conversation around that because it felt that it could be a seed point rather than just a book. It could be a seed point to this growing aware an emerging awareness. So I co-founded Whole World Hyphen View to serve this understanding and crucially, vitally, the experiencing and embodying of a unitive perspective. And that was really to serve this emergent potential, these emergent times that we're living through.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we're going to go to commercial break now. Be back again in a couple of minutes, and we're going to explore this more. What does it mean? What does it mean for business? What does it mean for you? How can we, move away from a mechanistic mindset to, which might be about leadership of command and control, to one which is about, a more coherent, conscious, participative approach. So we'll be back again with you in just a couple of minutes. Do join us after the break. Hi, this is Chris Cooper. I'm back again with Jude Currivan, and we've been talking about, why we're not separate. We've been talking about unity. We've been getting some perspective to try and understand, a bigger picture view. And before we go into that, though, I'd love to say a big thank you to Sandy Sedgbeer. Sandy is an incredible broadcaster and author and media consultant, and she very kindly introduced me to Jude. So thank you, Sandy. We both appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sandy.
So Jude, let's now think, practically, what does this mean for us as a human being going through life? What practically does this mean?
Well, first of all, I would say that I had a conversation about this earlier. A lot of businesses, in terms of looking at risk return, um, sort of look at it from how things were, and things are not as they were. And very, very quickly, things are going to be progressively not as they have been. So, for us to keep trying to go on with a worldview of separation, with all the trauma that that has brought and the unsustainability that that has now engendered, is just a way, for me, it's just a suicide mission,
Yeah,
essentially. I'll take it to that point because I do not see how we can survive, let alone thrive as a species, coming from that same mind view of separation, because it drives our worldviews, our mindsets, drive our behaviors. And so I'm not putting blame or shame anywhere, but I'm saying we're at a point now where that perspective of us being separate from each other and our planetary home, people may not want to move beyond our planetary boundaries, but the point is, we and our planet are part of this unitive understanding of our universe. It doesn't just stop at the atmosphere. It goes on for the whole nature of unitive reality. Unless we make, it's almost a choice, whether we make a choice to wake up and appreciate this existential understanding of who we are, then I don't think we have much of a future. Or certainly not a future that I would want for myself or my children or children and future generations. So that's the point, really. So it affects us. We may not feel it affects us. It's way out there. It is not. It is truly intimate. It's intimate, the choices we make and the way we behave every day. And whether that's on a personal level or whether that's in an organization or business, the times are coming where we've got a fundamental choice. Do we fall into fear and fragmentation, or do we leap into love? And
yeah.
it's truly is as existentially vital as those choices. And what I'm sharing is that we have the evidence now that we are together, we're all together in this, and we can link up and lift up consciously in this. This scientific perspective with all the evidence, Chris, is convergent with universal wisdom teachings, with indigenous teachings, with teachings based on an understanding of a deeply spiritual, our deeply spiritual nature. It's as though science has finally come to the party these
Mm.
traditions have understood for millennia, and it affects us in our everyday choices.
And how do you make the conscious leap, Jude, from that feeling of separation? And it does feel in the world that we've attracted leaders into this world who promote separateness. Um, at this point, at this conjuncture, I guess we're in a state of flux. So, but it does feel like the prevailing consciousness at the moment is one. There is a feeling of a zeitgeist of anxiety across the globe right now, which suggests that we're more in fear than in love. And the world seems to promote, the media seems to promote more and focus in on fear more than love. How do we lift ourselves above that and get to a point where humanity's consciousness is able to attract and push a leadership through that can see the importance of togetherness, of love, of co-creation, of working together to solve the world's issues and challenges?
Well, first of all, I think it's already happening. I agree
Good.
with you. I don't think the mainstream media are reporting on it, but there's a lot
Mm.
of grassroots movements and communities coming together from this perspective. And they may use different languaging of it, but it's basically about coming together, realizing that we're all part of the communities of life of our planetary home. So it's already happening.
Yeah.
Secondly, we are not separate from the evolutionary impulse of our universe. And so I would suggest that if we can realize that the evolutionary impulse of our universe is flowing through us, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, but people like Sandy, who you mentioned, and yourself, and many, many others are aware that it's not, it's much big, this is much bigger than any and all of us. So this is happening. This is like, this is like spring coming. You're not
Yes.
going to stop spring coming. It will come, and it is coming. The question is, are we going to be part of that? And that is where our
Mm-mm.
choice is, because, a self-aware, what I would say microcosmic co-creators, we have choice. And we may choose to close our ears and close our hearts, or we may make the choice to open our ears, see with new eyes, and live in different ways going forward. And what I would suggest as part of this is I've been reframing our metacrisis as a metamorphosis, because this is when a caterpillar has eaten enough and it can't eat anymore, it goes into a chrysalis, and it's basically its body dissolves. But in that dissolution, the nutrient soup then starts to activate what's called imaginal cells of the emergent butterfly. And what I'm feeling and sensing, and all my work is sort of seeing this around the world, is that we've been a caterpillar species and we can't go on eating because there's nothing left to eat.
No.
And so I think we're already in a cocoon, and we're already in a dissolution, a breaking down of the old that cannot sustain itself anymore. And so in that metamorphosis, it's turbulent. But the difference is that in a meta-crisis, there's just a complete breakdown. In a metamorphosis, there's also a breakthrough.
Yes.
And the breakthrough is really, it seems to me, that we are beginning to activate as imaginal cells of that emergent potential, an evolutionary possibility. And we're finding each other and starting to link up and lift up
Mm.
together as imaginal cells do of the butterfly.
Yeah.
The point is, when that metamorphosis, that process continues, and the butterfly at the end of it is ready to fly, it literally sees the world through new eyes. It literally has evolved to see the world through new eyes. And so it lives a completely different way of engaging with the world than the caterpillar did. Now, I'm not blaming caterpillars, and I'm not blaming, the journey we've made, but that is where I feel we're at. And for me, that says this is authentically hopeful,
Yeah.
because it's founded on the evidentially based reality of our unity in diversity, and it is based on the evolutionary processes of life. And I'm talking more than biological life. This is about conscious evolution.
And that metamorphosis could be reframed as an exciting time to be alive.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and I think if we look back, through hundreds and hundreds of years of human existence, we see those cycles, don't we, of spring, summer, autumn, and then winter, and when things start to break down, and I guess people start to see the wood from the trees and what was maybe going on, and what new ways and change. But we always come out at spring, and what I've taken that from that conversation right now is we are in a very important phase right now, and what we want to do is come together to make sure we all come through in spring, or as many of us as possible.
Absolutely. And one of the things we have a strap line at Whole World View, we talk about act local, feel global, and think cosmic. So, what this is really emphasizing is that through this metamorphosis, let's, as the imaginal cells, as we are individuated imaginal cells, as it were, when we link up and lift up, we become what's called organelles. And those organelles, what's theirs to do is whatever is theirs to do, whether it's to become a wing, a leg, an antenna, or a new eye of the butterfly. But the point is, all of those organelles are nurtured by the evolutionary impulse that's flowing through.
Mm.
I'd love your perspective on this from the work that you do, because I suspect that you too have found that people now are finding each other. You have a community that has found each other and that is growing, and I suspect that your community is connecting with other communities.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
the point. This is what is happening. And there
Yeah.
is a realization that the old ways of separation not only no longer serve us, but if we look at the whole story of evolution on our planetary home as well as the universe, our planetary home over nearly 4 billion years, the next stage of evolution is always through cooperation and higher levels of cooperation that
Yes.
enable greater levels of complexity.
Yes. That's interesting. I was having a coaching conversation with somebody this morning, and they were, trying to work out the the precise avatar of their ideal client, who were following some expert, and who was talking about demographic and all that sort of thing. And what I said to them is, are you sure that what you really may perhaps need to be looking at is values? Because I think what's happening with what happens with my community and outside of the community, there's a wider growing community. There's people being attracted into that, and I think it's not about being attracting people who are the same as us or the same nationality as us or the same age as us. It's actually what we're attracting in people are people who are kind, who care, who want to contribute, who want to use this period of their lives to make a difference because they realize that all of their wisdom that they've incurred in the past is they're now at a point where they can make a difference, but they don't necessarily know how, or they need support to be able to do that. And I think what I'm realizing we attract today is people based upon a set of values that where we have commonality that we share more so than whether you're black, white, big, small, come from the United States, China, or Russia. Actually, there are wonderful people in all those places that we will resonate with.
Wholeheartedly agree with you. And that's such an important point. And really our values derive from our mindsets, our worldviews, and we don't have to be sort of intellectual about it, but the way we see the world is the way we behave in the world. I mean, I was brought up, as I mentioned, by the most unconditionally loving mum. And in our community, when anybody had a problem, they found mum. They always found mum, and she was always there and loving and helpful. And she was the one who really poured her values into me and my brother. And those were of exactly as you described. They're about kindness and caring. And those are the values that are natural when we have a worldview. And we can have it very diverse, because unity does express itself in diversity. But when we have a worldview that doesn't slice and dice and separate and other, and make others other rather than family and community and friends, when we can welcome everyone into that circle of compassion, then, that for me is our invitation, is our possibility, is our potential, is our way forward. If we are not only to survive, but to thrive, if we are to go through this metamorphosis into the most incredible adventure, both as individuals and as species, and as planetary beings.
And this is I think why this conversation is so important. When I think about it, and you have a lot of community. Is right now we kind of need reminding of these things, don't we? We need reminding of the big picture.
Yeah.
And by coming together, what we do is we also build courage, because you talked about fear, and I talked about anxiety. But actually, what we have to do is we have to get to a place of love, and in
Yes.
in community, we can help each other with support and love and kindness, but also with the courage that we need to
Yes.
take action and move forward and do good.
Absolutely. And of course, courage comes from courage, which is bravery of the heart in French. So it's not, that's intellectual, brave, but whatever it is, bravissimo. It's the way of the heart, and it's compassion. It's actually knowing that, we are family with everyone and everything in existence.
Yeah. Yes. That's nice, isn't it? We're family.
We're family and we belong. I mean,
Mm.
one of the things with the mechanistic worldview is it's innately separate. And it's innately meaningless and purposeless. I mean, that's the whole, cosmology of an essentially dead universe, an accidental universe. That is being completely turned on its head now. And it really, by turning off its head, it's much more than the big picture. It is the big picture, but it's the ground on which we stand. It's the choice we make, the choices we make in our everyday lives. As you say, it's the values that are embodied in those choices.
Mm. And in terms of making meaningful change and evolution, we are noticing, and I'm noticing people coming together internationally through which we've got technology helps us do that as well. Um, irrespective, but what the media tends to focus on, and also this is really interesting. I've had a lot of people say to me of late, the good thing about what I'm doing is I go under the radar.
Yes.
Uh, um, are we saying here there's a whole series of movements and wheels and things like that that are going under the radar that actually are helping us towards this collective approach, whereas the media focuses on, certain figures across the globe all the time and everything they do on a daily basis, and people think that's the world and that's what's happening.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And, I think it works through it. These changes work through in many, many different ways. And I think the more we are conscious and the more we proactively reach out to link up and lift up together, then at some point we're no longer under the radar.
Mm.
And at that point, others sort of take notice. I mean, the conversations I'm having are with heads of government, they're heads of organizations, they're the United Nations. They're major global institutions who really want to move into this evolutionary journey, this journey of metamorphosis that we're all on anyway. But they
Yes.
want to they want to they want to consciously be part of the evolutionary potential. And then it goes down to grassroots. And many, many, many grassroots movements are growing and moving forward. And it's everybody. It's multi-generational, and it's both. I'm writing I'm not just writing, but bringing also forward as part of this meta crisis to metamorphosis. And in these, dear friend of mine, Youssef Mahmoud, calls these in between times, how to be a good ancestor, to ask the question of policymakers around the world, how do you want to be remembered? Because
Yes.
this is a time of transformational change. How do you want your grandchildren to remember you by? How do you want future generations to remember you by? And if the answer is as a good ancestor, then the sort of things we've been discussing are, absolutely at the heart of what that means.
Yeah. Yes. And there's some we heard with some people, and I've had people on the show, and we've talked about thinking of 7 generations ahead.
Absolutely.
Um, th at this world point in time, uh, I I do also sense some people struggling to think that there might be 7 generations ahead.
Which is why I don't talk about 7 generations, because I know it's the Native American tradition. It's a
Yes,
beautiful
it
tradition.
is.
But I just talk about how, being relevant in the here and now. How do
Yes,
you want to be remembered? And it may be just by, your children or your grandchildren, or it means 7 generations ahead. And it's not so much how you might be remembered, but the difference you make in the world. How is that remembered?
yeah,
What
yes,
difference can you make to serve the good of the whole now? That you would, that it doesn't necessarily your legacy, you may not be remembered as you, but what you do in the world will ripple
yes,
through the
yes.
future.
So taking this feel of unity and uh, people may be feeling struggling right now on many different fronts. Some people are struggling economically.
Sure.
Some people are struggling with their mental health and well-being right now, and the feelings of fear and uncertainty. How would you recommend that people apply on a day-to-day basis what you've shared today, so that they can go forward on the front foot, not in anxiety, but
Absolutely.
in action and be able to act.
This is vital, isn't it? And I think you're right. It's a daily thing. It's not something that we can sort of go through all the stress of 6 days of the week, and then on the seventh day, we decide we'll sort of do something that will alleviate it. Because I think that nurturing and that is a daily practice. I would invite folks to really hear what makes their heart sing, what makes their heart sing, because it
Yeah.
comes from the wisdom of the heart. It really emanates from our hearts. And so, not what I think, but what I feel, and what makes me feel happy, good, joyous, that I belong. And for many people, and myself included, that's being out with Mother Gaia, being out in nature.
Yeah.
And however simple that is, I mean, I'm a gardener and I'm growing vegetables. I love growing vegetables. And a runner bean came up. My little runner bean came up the other day. I was so happy, so happy.
Yeah.
And I think, just very simple things like offering ourselves some time wherever we may be, whether it's a window box or a small backyard or a park or larger spaces, but just to be out in nature, because our planetary mother is our primary mother and she nurtures us extraordinarily wonderfully well. So that for me is a big part. And I know there are so many studies on how being out in nature is supportive of both mental, physical, and emotional health.
I'm smiling because what made me really happy last week was I built I can just show this to you, but if for this video I built a wildlife pond, little wildlife pond in my garden. That was my little project last week,
I
and
love
it
it.
brought me so much happiness.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
So much
that's
happiness.
that's very much what I'm meaning. And the simple things, we so overcomplicate our lives, and we sort of do so much in the pursuit of, economic pursuits, that we're time poor and we're joy poor.
Yes.
And so, as gardeners, my invitation is to grow our hearts,
Yeah.
to grow our
It was a
hearts.
beautiful. It was a beautiful idea with one of my community members, Jean Early, suggested, which I've adopted myself, which is 15 gratitude statements a day. So do them on my phone, and but also feeling into each one. So the gratitude of seeing a bird in the garden, how beautiful it
Absolutely.
is. For me, obviously, building my little wildlife pond in my garden. That I was grateful for that. I'll be writing down how I'm grateful for you, Jude, tonight, and how I'm grateful for the people who listen to this show and get in touch and contribute. But doing that and then feeling into the emotion of that has
Yeah.
really that simple exercise has really lifted me every day.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Many years ago, I talked about a threefold wave of love, joy, and gratitude. And wherever you enter the wave, when you surf that wave, it just lifts you,
Yes.
because that really brings us to that remembered wholeness of who we are. So love, joy, and gratitude.
Jude, it's an amazing conversation today. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I think I could probably have you on the show once a month and still not run. I think we just touched the surface. But if you want to find more information about Jude, go to wholeworld-view.org, wholeworld-view.org. And when you're there, do watch A Radical Guide to Reality. Do watch the video there. On next week's show, we have Tracy Jones. So we're going to be talking an amazing individual. We've been talking about preparing for adult life, and she has various programs helping people prepare their young people for adult life. There will be another fascinating conversation. We've got 30 seconds left, Jude. Do you have a final message you'd like to leave us with?
Hope. I would like to leave us with authentic hope that we are in incredibly turbulent times, And we are waking up to remember that we're not alone, that we're all part of the great communities of life that is our living, evolving, and loving universe. And to literally, with every breath we take, feel that big breath flowing through us. So as we breathe in the life and love of our universe, breathe our life and love into the world.
Wow. Beautiful way to end. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Jude. Do check out all Jude's resources. Any questions, comments? Love to hear from them. Chris@chriscooper.co.uk. Go away and live well. Feel gratitude and find the community for you to help you move forward and take positive action in the world. Whether you're leading an organization, whether you're an entrepreneur, whatever you are, whether you're a student, whether you're just find those people with good values that inspire you and give you the courage to move forward. We need to come together today as one in unity to ensure that once we get out of this period of winter into spring, we're all here on this planet. Um, it's important. We need to do important